evening, folks, and welcome to the Square D, the Jack the Ripper of GAA Analytics. My name is Conor Galvin, your host for this evening, and we're joined as ever by the Professor, the King himself, and founder of GAA Pro Stats, Mr. Stephen O'Mara, coming to us live and exclusive from Old Castle, County Meath. How's she cutting down there?
Not so bad at camping in a very wet field today. So big shout out to the librarian at Old Castle who let me into a room in the back to get a bit of quiet.
The glamour of it all. That's cutting edge. Folks, if you finally make it to be a GA statistician and performance analyst, you can expect to go camping in a field in middle of July in the pissings of rain. I'll tell you one thing, it's all ahead of you. And you're looking for some career guidance counselling, you've come to the right place. So listen, we're here to preview, right, two mouth-watering contests this weekend. Although a lot of analysts have already written Dublin and Kerry down for the final. But it's marching season, right? We're writing off two Ulster teams, albeit Monaghan a border county, but they were ravaged during the famine worse than most counties. Now it's down to both teams coming down. This is a free shot. They have nothing to lose, right? They're going to raise holy hell, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm not sure Derry will feel they've nothing to lose. We'll come on to that one second. Monaghan maybe more so. I thought Vinnie Corey spoke extremely humbly, but also rationally when he made the point, the 3 times I think before when they got the quarterfinals, they got top 4 teams in the quarters or top 2 or 3 teams, whereas they got a more winnable game, a 50-50 in the quarter this year, whereas now they're getting that Dublin, Kerry, whoever in the semis. So maybe it's more of a shot to nothing for Monaghan. But I'm not so much sure Derry will feel that way. I think they'll have felt from the off they had a serious crack at it. I think I might have been the only one who suggested Monaghan could be a dark horse for the All-Ireland, and I seem to remember you poking fun at me, Mr. Galvin.
Well, there you are. Well, look at if you took the whole population of Monaghan, right, you could not actually fill Croke Park. I think that's the best stat of the week.
Yeah,
all 61,000 of them. There'd still be 21,000 empty seats.
Yeah,
or standing room. Even if you brought every man, woman, child, and cattle out of the place.
Yeah, and I look at a topic close to my heart. I think it's very easy for. Look, population is a factor. There's no two ways about it. There's a reason why Italy beat the Dutch more often than vice versa, because they've 3 times the population, 4 times the population, up to 5. You get more players, but I think it's very easy as well to write off our Division 4 team or whatnot, because you have a small population. You see Monaghan, Roscommon. It's an element, but it goes to show what can be done. But
hang on now. I mean, the Dutch ransacked the diamonds out of Africa. And what they made for in lack of population, they made up for in monetary wealth.
They surely did, not to mention the gold that landed in the Spanish southern ports during the South American gold rush. But we won't get into that. I believe only 5% of that stayed in Spain. But yes, there is that. Monaghan don't have the South American gold or the South African diamonds, but they're doing something right there all the same.
They do. Well, they have a few diamonds of their own up there. Some which we're going to get to, right? Obviously, Conor McManus made no secret over the years. One of his lifelong goals was to take on the Dubs in front of a packed Hill 16 and really have a lash at them, right? He's never actually had this opportunity in his career to date, even though it's coming late. Some might think he's past his powers, but here it is, right? McCarran, the same. A few lads. This is their last hurrah. These lads are not going to come down half-cocked, are they?
No. Now, I don't know. Did McManus not play in the quarter-final against Dublin in, I'm going to say 14, maybe? Dublin came with a high press that hadn't previously been seen, really. I think they were 10 points to 1 up after 12 minutes with a high press. Though, can't say if McManus was or wasn't playing, but he would have been 25 odd at the time. But obviously, look, he's 35. He's not playing full games. A player of that ability Yeah, it may well be his last season, or certainly his second last at the very least. He'd probably predict his last season. I mean, there's very few 35-year-old inter-county footballers these days. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, look, we're going to go on to the McManus factor, which is a bit of an enigma to some extent in the context of what we've seen. But yeah, look, it's an opportunity for these boys
Yeah.
that relish it and feel they've nothing to lose because everybody has them written off already. And now I just got to forensically write them off as opposed to flippantly
Well,
do
just
so.
as a point of fact, Monaghan have already won an All Ireland title this year. They won the Lowry Maher in the hurling. They have celebrated that with great gusto. Up and down the county. Not widely known outside the county, but they certainly have dined out in the Lowry Maher for quite a while. The minors got to the All Ireland final as well against Derry,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
there's a pattern of success, right? That is building in the county. But we talked off air, right? Stephen O'Mara thinks there's two ways for Monaghan to score. What are they?
Yeah, and this is the enigma, I suppose. You've got McManus and McCarron are your classic scoring forwards, drop the shoulder kick from narrow angles from 40 yards under pressure. Hughes to an extent is that bracketable from midfield, Darren Hughes. But the issue that I see, Monaghan, I'm not flippantly writing Monaghan off. I was the one who pointed out that their offensive figures were outlandish, and they are. And we'll have a look at those in a moment. But Monaghan have had two ways of scoring. One is the McCarron-McManus classic inside forwards scoring. The other one, which I imagine if I had data on every ball contact of every Monaghan player, which I don't, obviously, is too labour intensive to be doing it for every team. I suspect the players who actually have a higher phase of possession to score ratio, if I was to hazard a guess, I would imagine Conor McCarthy is number one. I would assume Bannigan is number two. And I would assume O'Connell and O'Hanlon are 3 and 4 because they have that, what I call the Conor Callahan factor, that they drop the shoulder, they use their electric pace. And of those kind of players in the country, Conor Callahan is the standout. And Ethan Doherty maybe fractionally behind them. And I think maybe fractionally behind Ethan Doherty again is Conor McCarthy. And those other 3 Monaghan boys are thereabouts, maybe, who else is there like that in the country? Stephen O'Brien would be a classic case of that kind of player that when they get the ball and they run at you, Paddy Clifford, albeit there's more kicking about him. When they get the ball and run at you, they're nigh on impossible to stop. They will actively seek mismatches and go at them. And that's where they've got their joy predominantly. I think more so when the team at McManus and McCarron, there's a bit of the Bernard Brogans about them, which ultimately I suspect is why he ended up out of Jim Gavin's plans, that they tend to hit shots that are maybe 40%ers for most players, or maybe 60%ers for those boys, or 50%ers. On a bad day, they can miss a lot of them. And I remember when Monaghan were beaten by Fermanagh, it was 2018. I remember watching it on TV just before Galway threw in against Sligo. It was at 18, I think it was, not 19. Like, McManus had a lot of wides. And the thing about those kind of forwards is they do when they can. On their good days, they're great, but the bad days tend to go unnoticed. There's more predictability about the Conor Callahans, the Ethan Dohertys. As I say, those 4 real running Monaghan footballers. And again, I'd have Conor McCarthy in an Ireland 15, personally, along obviously with O'Callaghan and Ethan Doherty, because there's such value in those players. The problem is that where they've isolated athletic weaklings against other teams, there are no athletic weaklings against Dublin. So I don't think those 4 boys are going to have the joy they've had in other games. Like Conor McCarthy, I suspect to score and assist on 3-4 points a game, average, maybe 5-6 on a good day, chipping in with goals. Obviously got a hat-trick against Donegal in the league, 18 months ago. But he's going to be running at, Owen Merchants, Brian Howard's, fellas like this. And while he might have a marginal bit of pace over 2/3 of Dublin players, not the kind of pace to burn lads. So I don't think that model is going to be as successful as it has been for Monaghan. And it's worth noting, and this is the point I made to you a number of weeks back, maybe 2 months at this stage, is that if I can get this chart up on screen.
And just on that, while that is loading, right?
Yeah.
Is there a danger here that we're basing the form of Dublin and Kerry, for that matter, of 2 second half performances where both oppositions ended up going man on man against them? Obviously, Mayo, we discussed it. Porrick was put in there. McLaughlin wasn't playing. They chased the game man on man. Bang! They got annihilated. And Tyrone, obviously, were a horror show.
This is the issue. Look, I haven't updated these figures since the quarter final, but you get the general idea. Monaghan have the second best offensive figures of the top 8 teams up to the quarter final. As they haven't updated those figures. You see 4.9 points per 10 phase. Now, Derry, who will come on to, are 5.7. Now, Dublin, I don't have genuine data on Dublin. It's 3.9, and we'll come on to that. But we can assume Dublin's data needs to be taken with a pinch of salt because there's so little of it. So we have that. And that's come a lot off those running players. But they were annihilated by Derry, who are a lesser version of Dublin. Athletic, structured, systematic, Jim Gavin style. More so even than the current Dublin team. But they wouldn't have the raw ability Dublin would have. And probably have a little bit less athleticism. When Monaghan tried to play his own defence against Derry with McCarron, McManus, Hughes, the Derry boys brought 15 players forward, forced Monaghan to go zonal, but frequently ended up man on man, 15 behind the ball, but still no sweeper. And we did a piece on it. Was it McCluskey? I think caught McManus man on man, and he burned him goal. And the problem is Dublin will do the same thing. And now Monaghan are in a conundrum, in my view, because we did a piece here showing that maybe there's method in the madness of going man on man against Derry, making them play an old school football game instead of a process game, which they are one of the 2 standout teams in the history of the game at, Jim Gavin Dublin and the current Derry. But the problem is, if Monaghan keep these boys in the team like they did when they lost 121 to 110 to Derry, there's got to be 3 athletic mismatches when Dublin abandon their sweepers. It's 15 v 15. They'll try and shift across and get a sweeper, but Dublin will probe and cross over, and they will probably isolate. They will probably pull a sweeper out of position, and you'll have these 3 boys potentially being athletically mismatched. Now, when Monaghan went man on man the second time against Derry, and they drew with them, they left off McCarron, McManus, and Hughes came on with a strap on his leg. I don't know, was that a choice or was he injured? But I think it worked out. If I was going down that plan, it was a brave, really brave, savvy plan by Corey. I thought it was brilliant management to just tear up the script you've been working on all year. And I heard recently from a reliable source, apparently just planned, they played AVBs with that game plan for 2-3 weeks before it, whatever time it was. But the point I'd make is technically I think Monaghan are probably slightly better kick passers than Derry. And when they took out those athletic mismatches to be exploited in defence, all of a sudden Derry couldn't isolate these boys and go by them. But the problem is, whereas they could probably outplay Derry a little bit football-wise and maybe still slightly athletically inferior, but they could match Derry as a football team at least. And they drew, albeit the expected score, Derry should have won that game by a few points. But the conundrum is that if they play those creative players, they've got a problem in defence. If they don't play them, I don't see them getting those scores that they get against Derry by running the ball hard as much as they did against Derry. So I think it's some extent they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. And that's why I find it difficult to see how they're going to match Dublin. Whatever about up to 55 minutes, that last 15 plus injury time, for me, it's hard to see how they could pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, one key battleground as well. I mean, obviously in the All-Star ranks, these guys are pretty close. But you've Rory Began on one end, who is the box office, the roving, the Agita, the Colombian Agita of modern day GA. He was the first guy to really get out there,
Yeah.
Now, albeit he didn't save a penalty with a scorpion kick yet. He might have tried it.
Never did.
Never did.
Not that I've seen anyway.
But you've Began, right, multi-All-Star goalie up against the king, right? The Tom Brady NFL, Cluxton.
Yeah.
Now, since Cluxton's come back,
Yeah.
right? Cluxton hasn't lost a match, let's face it, right? He hasn't lost a championship game since Donegal in 2014. That's nearly a decade ago. Was the last time he lost a
Yeah.
match, right? There's no
Yeah.
coincidence here, is there?
Championship match, yeah. No, look, and I wrote the article. I'll come back to it because it's a great case of I told you so. I did write the article in 2017. The 5 players Dublin cannot be without. Number 1, Stephen Cluxton, because nobody else has the kick out ability and the intellect and the implied odds of where to kick them, where not to kick them. Number 2 was Kieran Kilkenny.
Just sorry, 1 second for our new of your implied odds. Explain.
Implied odds, i.e., right, that's an easier kick out than that, but the risk of that going wrong is not worth it in the context of the game where we're 2 points up, for example, compared to another Dublin keeper who in a particular game, in a club game, 3 points up on 60 minutes, went for the easier kick pass, the easier kick, but the only one that could possibly lead to a goal being conceded. It was, and his club ended up losing. Stephen Cluxton would have had the scientific thinking not to hit that 80% kick. He'd have gone for the 60% kick, knowing if they lost, that they weren't going to be done for a goal, 3 points up in injury time.
You can name this goalkeeper now. This isn't this isn't the Public Accounts Committee. There's no GDPR here.
I refer to Evan Comerford for all his raw ability. He's not a science teacher. Stephen Cluxton is a science teacher. Ballymun against Jude's, I think 2019. Ballymun were 3 up going into injury time, and they ended up losing, conceding the goal and a point. But Cluxton, and there's a great piece I'm going to show you in a second. I didn't make that point. It was Cluxton, Kilkenny, the game controller, Fenton, the fielder, the athletic, running, footballing fielder that they lacked in 14 when Donegal cleaned them out in kickouts. Fenton, a gift from the gods, landed from the stars. Connolly, but Connolly was out and O'Callaghan was in. Different styles, but equally effective. I'd argue maybe O'Callaghan more effective in the modern game. And Dean Rock, because he organises everything and he's the centre of press and kickouts, which has huge value. Cluxton, Dublin won 6 in a row with Cluxton. They won 7 out of 8. They won 7 out of 8 with Cluxton. They won 7 out of 7 with Cluxton and Kilkenny. The one they lost, Kilkenny was injured that year. So Kilkenny didn't lose a championship match for 8 years. Cluxton, you put that combination together. 13, they had Cluxton, Kilkenny. 14, they had no Kilkenny, they lost. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they had 2. Cluxton goes. They don't win the next 2 All-Irelands. Cluxton's back. And I have a great a tweet here. I'm not going to put it up on the screen, but I'm gonna read it out here. It's from GA Insights on Dave Morris's Twitter page. Dave, and former coach of Corofin, and the great data. And they've more data than I have because I wasn't doing Division 2 games, broadly speaking. And here it is, July 18th. Cluxton has returned and restarts have benefited. Dublin have a net points per kick out of 0.25 in 2023, up from 0.14 in 2022. Helped mainly by converting short kickouts to scoring 115 from 35 shorts. Now, to give that in slightly less statistical language, again, going back to that implied odds, it alludes well to. Now, again, I want to bear in mind the sample size is really small. I actually didn't check what games they were. There's only one game we can really take seriously with Dublin. That's Mayo, but their stats were good. It was an acid test and their stats were good. There's 2 elements to that. One is out of Cluxton's hands, pardon the pun, what the team do when they get the ball. That appears by that tweet to be up. Secondarily, goes back to that coming for Cluxton, Jude's, Ballymun. There's I won't name these ones, but there was a case where a team I worked with, there was 2 keepers, and there was a debate over who would be the starting keeper. And I didn't go into the goalkeeping technical stuff. There was a goalkeeping coach, but when I looked at it, I had 2 identical games on their stats. They had played basically the same championship games against the same 2 teams over 2 years, and you looked, and the particular team, goalkeeper A, had profited 0.15 per kick. With one keeper, that counted the first turnover each. The other was 0.45 per kick, and one of these was against one of the outliers in their championship, and they scored a load off them. So the fact that Cluxton is back, they're getting hands on ball in the kickouts more. There's a more scientific thinking in the odds, and it's so no one can know what somebody else is thinking, certainly when there's that many possibilities and options. But the figures, when you get enough figures, you do find that the smarter, better keepers, their team in equal games, all things being equal, they score more off the kickouts on average. And albeit as a sample size, that tweet there from Dave Morris it points to the fact that it has improved hugely with Cluxton back in the team, albeit it's a small sample size, and there may be Division 2 games in there or Division 2 opposition. I presume there is if there's 4 games on it or so. But there, so yeah, I think that is the key defining factor of what Dublin are bringing that they haven't had. It's a game changer for me.
Yeah, I mean, look at like the last day. I mean, when it went man on man, when you had, talk about the South African style bomb squad coming off the bench. Kilkenny comes in, Paddy Small comes in. Two absolute electric eels. Jack McCaffrey, Dean Rock then follows them over the wall. All of a sudden, it's like the Indians coming over to Rio Grande. It's like devastation time.
Yeah, and you said it to me last night. I mean, how I would approach this and whether Monaghan will or not, I don't know. Again, I pointed out they kicked a lot of ball through the middle third against Kerry in the league and they were massacred on the turnover. It wasn't how they'd ever played Kerry before. It wasn't how they played under Malachi O'Rourke or Banty. And they did change. They learned their lesson. They changed. I think it would be suicidal to play that way against Dublin. I think they know that. The Roscommon model, it was the Stephen Poacher model against Dublin 17. Just keep the ball, play basketball, don't make this a game of athleticism. Use Beggan, he's the master of 5v4 out of the back. Chase us. We have an extra body, we'll use it. I would think maybe that's the only approach they could possibly pull this off, and they may well try it. It worked for Roscommon, whether Dublin will have learned a few lessons about how to press zones if you're pressing 4v5 or 5v6. That is one, because as I say, you could do well up to 55 minutes, but unless they play the game at that pedestrian tempo, I can't see it in the last 15, whatever about the first 55.
I mean, Roscommon were able to reduce the phases, and then there was a bit of lack of discipline. I mean, Tom Lahiff, which we obviously talked about before.
Yeah,
Scully hit a ball,
throw it over the bar,
sweeper twice. Exactly.
Yeah, there were 2 points up in injury time. They went for a goal, and there was a point on. Yeah, little things.
Yeah,
and I still think.
So, how many phases? Like, I mean, have you a broad idea for Monaghan to have a snowball's chance here, right?
Yeah, well, this is
how many phases does this game have to be reduced to for Monaghan to actually beat Dublin?
This is a key point, and I don't want to get too bogged down on this, but there is a point on this with slow phase teams. If you're the underdog, it's great value because, like a modern game, if I have one up in front of me here, do I? A modern game. I mean, there's a club article done. Forgetting who to give the credit to, but the average in Mayo club football was 90 phases a game. You know, Donegal, I think it was 60. Then you went down to Kilcoo, I think it was 50. Sorry, Donegal was 68 maybe or something. Kilcoo were 57 or 58. Obviously, had 14% there on a county game. But you see there, like some of the games, some of the Galway, Roscommon, Donegal, Derry games, they're down as low as 30.5 in 60 minutes, in 70 minutes of football. Obviously, the mathematics of that is that it increases the chances of the underdog winning by getting a goal or by the laws of probability swinging on good shooting for the underdog and bad shooting for the opposition. Again, it's a point to make going back to Corofin. I mean, I don't have data on this. I never did for Corofin was opposition analysis, but my perception, and I imagine data would play it out. Contrary to common perception, I don't think Corofin won 3 All-Irelands in a row because they attacked so efficiently. They attacked fluently and beautifully, but a lot of ball got kicked away. They won the All-Irelands because they could defend man-on-man high up the field so well, and man-on-man or with a +1 when teams came at them. And the point I'd make is the beauty of that for Corofin was they were probably playing those 90 phases a game. So even if they shipped 2 goals, there's so many phases and it's so loose, the chances are they'd still win 118 to 210. Whereas if you get into a game where there's 60 phases or 55 phases, you win a few kickouts more, and maybe you've got 30 phases to 25 phases if you do a job in the kickouts. And That's somewhere you'd like to think you could get Dublin. You'd have to get Dublin, but very difficult with Cluxton and goal. Albeit Loud did it, but then the ones they lost, they were crucified on. They conceded 1-4 from 5 kickouts. They lost in a half back line. So, but the lower the phases, the more there is for that puncher's chance. If you could get, say, 25 phases each, for the sake of argument, that would be exceptionally low in county football. But if you could do that, all of a sudden you get one goal. The other team shoot a little bit badly. They could still get their magic 7 shots per 10 phases. 50% score per 10 phases. They could still be on 12, 13 points. All of a sudden, you get one goal. You could win a game getting shots off on 55% and scoring half of it with the goal or thereabouts. So that's very mathematical. We get into that when we do the pure stats show next week. But look,
so Monaghan,
in conclusion, to go on, look, the lower the phases, the more of a chess game it is. But I still think it comes back to the fact that if they're going to break Dublin's defence, I think they need McManus and McCarron. That's even noting the fact that they have the second most efficient offence of the top 10 teams this year in the championship, in games only between top 10. But I do think there is the issue there that if those boys are playing, they have the second worst defence, above 5 points per 10 phases conceded. And I don't see where that's going to improve against Dublin unless they go with 14 athletes and then they're missing the magic up top. It's a long shot for me. I can't see how they can do it over 70 minutes.
Well, listen, Monaghan are going to show up bloody angry, okay? And I hope they do. I actually hope they do. I'll give it a good lash. So Monaghan to lead after 60 minutes, Dublin to win the match. We agreed on that. Good.
Let's not beyond reason. I think Dublin will be up at half time, but there we go.
Okay, well, listen, let's move on, right, to the second semi-final. Derry and Kerry, right? The bookies obviously have this, another, heavily weighted with Kerry. Again, as I said at the top of the show, this is built on the massacre of Tyrone, where Tyrone were completely brain dead. Second half went man on man for every single phase. You're seeing this closer to a 50-50 all in, aren't you?
Absolutely. Again, I think the implied odds in this case being that it's still Kerry, and you have to give the credit for the fact that they could magic up something that my data and my tactical eye aren't looking at, and maybe call it a 60-40, but at 75-25, no way. And I'm gonna put a few figures to this. If you bear with me, I'm actually going to share the screen here, and I'm gonna bore you with a little bit. I'm gonna talk you through it, so don't be overly concerned by the screen. If you can follow it, great. But I'm going to talk you through it. If you bear with me, I'm going to show you the matrix here, and this is really, really interesting.
Bear in mind, people tune in on a Friday night to look at this analytics screen. having a few beers or a glass of wine are going, what am I looking at here? Oh my God.
They'll need more than a few beers after this. But I've actually got more data on Monaghan than anybody this year because they've played so many top 10 teams.
Unless Stephen Hawking is tuned into us here, talk us through this.
Sorry, I've the most data of any teams on Derry and Monaghan. But here's Derry. Now, here's 5 games. Now, I'm going to talk you through it, but this is my matrix at the bottom of the screen. It's this table at the bottom. And basically what it's showing here is if we count kickouts in the 5 games I have on Derry, doesn't include the extra time in one. The extra time in the game they had against Armagh. I haven't counted that. But 94 kickouts, 173, lost 21, scored 334, conceded 6 points. So they're making a profit of 0.39 points per kickout against top 10 teams. That's fairly outrageous. Now, if we change up here to only your full back line and half back line, and this is an acid test for football, and we include the turnover against you when ball is turned over. They've scored from 54 hands on ball. They've scored 327. That's 36 points from 54 kicks. They've conceded 10. They've a profit of 0.44. That is absolutely outlandish. Like the highest I'd have been coming across At any time was Monaghan in 18 under Malik O'Rourke, and they were profiting 0.38 or 0.39, and that was incredible. Now, if we look at Kerry, and there's so much untold, that the first thing here is I've turned on data for time here for half time against Tyrone, because as we pointed out, Tyrone turned on the time machine, went back to pre-2001, played man on man, and got eaten alive. When we look at the first half figures, and actually a figure I forgot last week was, while Kerry scored 50% into the blanket defence in the first half against Tyrone, they actually only scored 1-6 in the second half. And the 6 times they did have to face the blanket defence, 17%. But if we look at Kerry, 42 kickouts. Sorry, if we go back to that similar table, hands on ball kickouts, 42, 41 won, 1 loss, 1 attempt, 15 points from 42, 8 conceded on the turnover, 0.17 profit per kick. That's against Derry's 0.44. Are we seeing the pattern here?
Yeah.
There's a problem here, and look, it's let me get that off the screen. So that's my matrix there. It makes a lot more sense to me, Will, to you. Look at all those numbers. But the point is, Kerry have had, I suppose, 3 acid-ish tests. We have to assume they came to the Mayo game in championship mode, wanting to top the group, and they failed abjectly to break down the blanket defence or the zonal defence. The blanket defence is a cheap term. I just use it because it's a more common expression. But they failed to break down the zonal defence. They then played Cork and had trouble breaking down Cork's zonal defence. And essentially, we're very lucky to win, I feel. Penalty, black card. I don't think they would have won it if that decision, I still argue, it hadn't happened.
I mean, just now, on those kickouts,
just to finish.
Just as you're going, right?
Yeah.
We spoke about Beggan versus Cluxton, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in Derry you have Oren Lynch, okay, heavily involved in all facets of their play, right? Kerry have Shane Ryan, right? Between the two of those lads, right, is there a bit of a gulf there? Is Shane Ryan not as good? Is he a weak link?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think Shane Ryan is exceptional, to be honest. If I say Ryan is maybe a slightly better kicker. Obviously, Oren Lynch is an outfielder, is an outfield footballer playing in goals. I think the issue to come back in 1 second. The point I want to make is the acid test that Kerry have had was blanket defence against Tyrone. And if I do my maths offhand, I think it was 8 out of 16 in the first half, which is 50%. But it was 1 out of 6 in the second half. Let's write off the man on man. They're not going to get those against Derry. Maybe off 1 or 2 kickouts or high turnovers. This could be a game of 90, 95, 98% phases into blanket defences, zonal defences. So those man on man stats where they scored 2-7 from 14 against Tyrone in the time machine, forget about it. It's of no relevance.
Marty McFly and Doc at the tower.
Absolutely. It's of no relevance to anything we're looking at here. They're going to play Derry into zonal defences. And they scored, if I tot those up manually, that's 16 plus 6 is 22. And they scored 9 out of 22. It's not bad. But the point is, the key point in this is that it was against Tyrone, who had the second worst defence in the country. Just beyond Monaghan defending. So it's not actually an acid test either. So
you had written off Tyrone a long way out here as well.
I had written off Tyrone a long way out. Their defence wasn't good enough. And, I think Conor McKenna was a huge factor in that All-Ireland win. Wasn't there. I think possibly underrated, even though he's highly rated. So the dynamic here, there's 2 dynamics here. Firstly, Kerry have kind of not massively pressed kickouts. Box of 6 is as aggressive as they've generally gone this year, which is quite passive by modern standards. If they go box of 6, Derry are going to get the kickouts off. I mean, Derry got the kickouts off on a 4-4-4 against Donegal last year. Donegal actually had to shapeshift in the middle of the game to start causing a bit of trouble on the kickouts. So if they go in a box of 6 or even a box of 7, which a box of 7 would be 3 in the full forward line, 3 in the half forward line, and 1 zonally in between, Derry are going to get off the kickouts. And we see those figures of what Derry have scored. Kerry's defence, now what I will say is Kerry's defence passed an acid test in the first half against Tyrone. And that's the first one they passed all year. So that's interesting because Tyrone had the third best offensive figures in the country, the top 10 teams. It was Derry, Monaghan, Tyrone. So that was an acid test that they hadn't passed in other games against good teams.
But they're a funny kind of a bunch, Kerry. I mean, like Jason Foley is a hell of a defender. The two O'Sullivan lads are grease lightning. Attack on the two other cornerbacks. You know, you've kind of Tyg Morley sitting, Murphy, then Gavin White in the mould of almost Jack McCaffrey, another speedster. They're not a kind of like when you look at the Kerry defence, yes, there's huge pace, power, but these are not great technical defenders, no matter what way you dress it up.
No, they're not.
Bryn O'Bagley came on the last day, who's probably more technical than lads, but you can get at these lads, can't you?
Yeah, well, again, I'd have O'Bagley in that team all day long because he's the best technical defender in Kerry and one of the best footballers. If you can get them isolated and not swarming you, absolutely. And Derry will hold that ball and hold that ball and hold that ball. And they've 5.7 points per 10 phases up to the last game I did. I haven't added in the Cork game to those stats, but it's thereabouts again. Might even increase that 5.7 average. Like, when I'll go back, and it's hard to say because it's different games and how seriously were Kerry taking it up until the group stages and whatnot. When Clare kept the ball through the hands at 45 degrees for the first 10 minutes of the second half in Munster, they ate Kerry alive, bar a bit of bad finishing. That's the way Derry play. Now, again, Ethan Doherty's not going to get any athletic mismatch against Kerry. The closest he'll get is Jack Barry, who I wouldn't say is particularly slow. He's just not as fast as maybe the other 13. I think I'm correct on saying that anyway. That's an observation. There's no data to back that up. But he's not.
Conor Glass, right? This is a big one for me.
Yeah.
Right. Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers. I mean, these are two generational footballers in my eyes.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I think they're fabulous. Right. They're up against Dermot O'Connor and Jack Barry, right, in Kerry.
Yeah.
Now, like, the funny thing is, the rhetoric going in, Glass, Rodgers, give him a run. This is a big day for if O'Connor and Barry show up and outplay the two lads and hands up. Look, whoever gets to the final is going to have one hell of a game against this Kerry outfit. They're going to be damn hard to beat. But are they going to handle them?
The two key dynamics that are essentially, and it's probably going to be a game of zonal defences. Can Kerry withstand Derry? The evidence so far is that you'd weighted towards the fact that Derry will hold the ball long enough to get scores off. Now, Derry failed against Galway last year. I think it was a gift for Derry that Galway went out. I don't think they had a turkey's chance of beating Galway because Galway are structurally extremely well set up, but also 2/3 of their team are technically excellent defenders.
Yeah.
Either coached by Kevin Walsh in Galway, Dave Morris in Galway, Kieran Murphy in Galway. 3 top coaches. Technical coaches, and at any given time 2/3 of the Galway team have probably been coached by one of those guys. Kerry don't have those technical defenders. They've 1 or 2. So Derry could find gaps in Kerry, notwithstanding the fact that the structure is brilliant, the swarming structure. When any bit of a doubt, a ball up in the air for half a second, they're in. They're leaving men goal side, which you'd teach an under 10 not to do, but it's obviously highly planned and strategized, and they're taking aggressive gambles and they're productive gambles. They won the All-Ireland doing it. But Derry are so methodical that I wouldn't like to say either way which way that would come down. I'm going to say it's 50-50 who's going to win that battle. The intriguing one is the other end, because Kerry are still, and I'll probably make a comparison with Galway hurling, they're still sort of winging it to an extent of raw ability, in the sense that I think if the Galway hurlers weren't as technically good as they are, they'd probably have looked at the Limerick style and tried to mimic it much earlier than they have. And I think Kerry, until the last game, and they ended a bit, there's no going down the channels along the sidelines down to the 21 to bring it back out to get it across the far side. It's all classic raw Kerry brilliance. Loop, central channel, heads up, Kerry football. No one else in the country could play it the way they do it. Heads up, ball in, 40-yard kick pass across a sweeper into Clifford or Geaney. Some of them are scored, some of them are cut out. I think if they try that against Derry, they're going to be looking at double sweepers all day and not having a lot of joy. I can see them kicking a lot of balls in double sweepers, or the full forward line getting ball and being swallowed up as soon as they get it. So I think Kerry are going to have to adopt that more modern, dare I say, Ulster approach, even though everyone's doing it now, as Kieran.
And tell me this, like all the talk, Chrissy McCaig, obviously, I mean, we're both big fans of his. I think he's the best defender in the country. All the talk is Chrissy McCaig picking up David Clifford. Now, given the form of Clifford, would you put Chrissy McCaig on Clifford or would you put him on Shawnee O'Shea? Who's more influential?
I would put him on Shawnee O'Shea, and that's a long conversation. We won't get massively into it. It'll be a key point on my. It'll be a key point on my.
You've been sharpening the knives for that one.
David Clifford's stats do not stack up for me. He kicks too much ball away. He had a brilliant last 20 minutes against Tyrone when they were open up like the Red Sea, chasing shadows. Brilliant pass for a goal. You play Kerry man on man, you'll see David Clifford and all the boys in their best. Clifford being the best of them. Against Tyrone in the league, against Tyrone in the championship, up to 40 minutes. I mean, Clifford had kicked 4 out of 5 misses against Tyrone up to just before half time. It was 2 out of 6 by half time. Anyone else would have been whipped off. It was the same against Tyrone in the league. It was the same against Galway in the league. Broadly speaking, I'm going to go into finer stats on this. I think in modern football, just like Bernard Brogan and Dermot Connolly, and I think that's why Jim Gavin had them out of the team, there's too much ball kicked away. There's too much beautiful passes don't come off. There's too many long-range shots don't go. And then when he fires 1, 2, and 5 over 40 yards, 4.4 points per 10 phases. If you've got an inside forward who's scoring 4 out of 10, it's bad value. It's bad value.
So I think that that particular podcast where you take on David Clifford should go behind the paywall. I think we'll get on to D Forbes and the RTE gang to get GA Go cover it. I'm sure we can package it all over.
Bear with me 20 seconds, will you? I've got to find the source of power here. Bear with me 20 seconds.
Absolutely, yeah. This is Stephen O'Mara at his finest down the old Castle Library. These things, don't worry, folks. These are quite planned, to say the least. So the other two guys, right? While you're there, right? I'm looking at Derry coming into this game, and the minors have won the All Ireland, the seniors have won the Ulster Championship, right? The Glen got to an All Ireland club final. Schlockneil paved the way. The two Glen boys up front, right? Ethan Doherty and McFall. Derry are not going down there to moral victories. Never with Monaghan. Now, no disrespect for Monaghan folk, right? If Monaghan pushed Dublin all the way to a 1 or 2 point game, or 1 or 2 score game, that's a hell of an achievement for Monaghan football. If Derry lose by a point, there's no use in Monaghan folk. They're going, as Gilroy would call it, balls out, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To beat Kerry. And that's the story.
I think Derry, like Tyrone back in the day, maybe even Tyrone last week, I think Derry are coming up here expecting they're going to win. I think they've every reason to expect they could win. I think it's a 50-50. As I say, when you look at the data, for me, the acid test of football, the acid test of footballers is man-on-man, heads-up kicking football. But there's not that much of it anymore. The acid test of what you can expect to happen in a modern game, which is mostly into zonal blanket defences, is what do you score off your short kickouts, hands on ball kickouts, when you're generally going to the field to face a blanket defence. Derry have profited, what do we say, 0.44 per short kickout, even taken out the turnover against them. Kerry 0.17. It's still Kerry. They don't really care till they get the All-Ireland semi-final, or they've obviously got to win the quarter-final first. So you just don't know. But I still think the data, if you showed me the data of the two teams, I didn't know who they were, I'd be saying, Derry, you're going to win this one. Obviously, it's still Kerry. There's dynamics. Paddy Tally will have a trick or two up his sleeve. You can bet your life on that. How much the Rory Gallagher factor, I think a team that are that well schooled, if a coach or manager disappears from the face of the earth, as long as whoever takes over doesn't try and butcher it, they get 90% of the value the following year, maybe 70 or 80 the next year. But it does dissipate week by week if you don't have that level of expert. And as the little, what I would have felt watching Gallagher with Donegal is the little detail he tweaked game by game. Now, you take those out, they came with a particular kick out to break the Donegal 4-4-4 press. And it worked until Donegal restructured. And still, Donegal didn't win the amount they normally would have. So you take that out, you're losing percentages every week, and that's no disrespect to anybody else in the setup. But I do think Gallagher is one of the tried and tested, proven top 3 in the country, probably the best, I would say. And I think we have to point out the fact that, you know, if those match day tricks aren't there, Tally will have that arm in his army. And again, I don't know who that's defensively. I don't actually know who the offensive coaches are in Kerry. I'm not sure what the coaching setup is in Derry. But look, I think looking at the stats, Derry's stats look better. But again, a lot of it depends who you're playing. And, you know, Derry, you probably played a lot of teams with poor defenses. So their offensive stats look better. Kerry have maybe played some of the better defenses, Mayo, Cork, so their offensive stats look poor. I'm going to say this is a 50-50. I think Chrissy McKaig, and you said you think Chrissy McKaig is the best man marker in the country. He is meticulous. He's again with scientists, angles, lines, meticulous. Footwork, has the speed, has that bit of gnarliness about him. Up against the bet, and not to take just a, you know, David Clifford is the best mover in Gaelic football in terms of losing markers, balance across imaginary lines, get the ball, throw the body one way, slip back. So it's the master man marker against the master forward in the context of moving, in the context of one-on-one football. Clifford is the master footballer. Whether he can get joy off Chrissy McKaig with a double sweeper or a single sweeper on his back the whole time, I don't know. If I had to nail my colours to the mast,
Derry.
My gut says Derry, but there is still that Kerry.
The good will do. The good will do.
Look,
we're going to go.
The mathematician to me is saying 60-40 Kerry. I'm sitting on the fence here. But my gut, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say, I think there's more questions, unproven. There's more unknowns about Kerry than there is about Derry coming into this. Whether that brilliant Kerry brilliance, Paddy Tally trickery, and I say that with a height of respect, will override that. Absolutely not beyond reason. Quite reasonably likely. If my life depended on it, I'm going to go Derry.
That's the stuff. So we're going Derry Dublin final. So come here, listen, you're going to swap the confines of a nice, warm, cozy library for a waterlogged campsite now in about an hour's time. And come here, speaking of Back to the Future, the Morton Mile is back tonight in Morton Stadium. You may remember from the sports historians among us, 1958 was the famous Herb Elliott Ronnie Delaney Mile. Herb Elliott won. There was 5 in the race, under 4 minutes on that occasion, believe it or not. But that's on Morton Stadium there tonight, and an ex-school teacher of ours, the great Liam Monaghan, is doing MC down there. And I think it's only fitting. Liam is a great expression. Miles to run and promises to keep. I think that's very apt heading into the weekend's action. So, come here, on that note, we will leave you to it until the post-mortem on Monday. Folks, take care, enjoy the action, and keep our lit. God bless.